Dr. Ryan Williamson is a board-certified neurologist, U.S. Navy veteran, best-selling author of The Incredible Brain, and advocate for human longevity. As the owner and founder of Health, he uses his expertise to help individuals optimize their health, extend their lifespans, and create more meaningful legacies. He has a passion for veterans as well as brain health and longevity, which we'll talk about today. Thanks to all of you, my wonderful New Normal Big Life health and wellness warriors, for sending in your questions for Dr. Williamson. If you're not following Dr. Williamson on X at rwilliamsonmd, on Instagram at dr.ryanwilliamson, and his Facebook group, which is packed with free resources at The Brain Foundation on Facebook. You're missing out on brain health and longevity tips. Friends, let's dive into today's topic with Dr. Ryan Williamson. Hi, friends. Welcome to the New Normal Big Life podcast. We bring you natural news and stories about nature that we hope will inspire you to get outside and adventure, along with a step-by-step plan to help you practice what you've learned and create your own new normal and live the biggest life you can dream. I'm your host, Antoinette, the Wellness Warrior. Dr. Williamson, welcome to New Normal Big Life.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm so excited for this conversation. We got so much listener feedback. We've got some brain health questions, and this is a really exciting topic for me personally because I'm a traumatic brain injury survivor. And first, I want to start off with thanking you for your service. I love talking with fellow veterans because we have an experience that is unique in the American population, and they don't often get to hear, in addition to the challenges we suffer, but the great things that fellow veterans like yourself are doing in the world after your service. You're continuing to serve in the community, and I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, thank you, Antoinette, and thank you for everything that you have done in the Army. As you know, it's a very difficult life to be an active duty service member, and it requires a lot of time away from home and giving up autonomy for a period of years, and so no, it's no easy feat. So thank you, and any of your listeners too who are fellow veterans, thank you for what you've done and what you do.
Oh, thank you for that, because we actually do have a lot of veterans who listen. In fact, let's give a shout out to the Veterans United community on X. I know you're watching. Thank you. I love you. So let's get to it. Today, I'm very excited because this is a milestone for me in my traumatic brain injury journey. I was, after leaving the Army, I became a tech CEO. I worked my way up. I was not a DEI hire. I worked my way up from the call center to tech CEO, and I was doing such a great job that every time a friend or former colleague had an opening at their new company, they would contact me and say, Antoinette, there's a job that's perfect for you. I'd like you to apply. If you do, I'll give you a reference. And I did. And that's really how I climbed the ladder, just by doing a great job. That is not easy with a traumatic brain injury. I also learned 2 additional languages and 2 more college degrees after traumatic brain injury. I thought life was golden. I had made it, that I was mastering managing my brain injury and health challenges very well. And then it all collapsed. One day, I couldn't remember how to drive my car. I couldn't remember the rules of the road, and it got progressively worse until I had to quit. And actually, I was still deciding whether or not I was going to quit my job, because that's a scary proposition. But they pretty much offered me a severance package to leave, which was generous. But this is the problem with a traumatic brain injury. It's so difficult to maintain your good health. And I had to work really hard to recover back from not just cognitive challenges, but physical challenges. I was losing the ability to walk. I had to use a walker, a service dog, and a full-time caregiver. I mean, I went into decline so fast. So your message today about longevity, brain longevity, is spot on, and I'm really excited about it.
Thank you for sharing your story, Antoinette. That takes a no small degree of courage to overcome and get through something like a TBI or traumatic brain injury. And as I'm sure you know from your experience and your reading and just living through it, they're different types of traumatic brain injuries. So we tend to categorize these between mild, moderate, and severe. And even even that seems to be a bit of a misnomer to me because a quote unquote mild traumatic brain injury can be very disabling for people. We might another eponym for that would be concussion. So people have a concussion that's also on the spectrum of a mild traumatic brain injury. Um, there's been a ton of research in the last several decades on this, and there have been there's still some unknowns, which really perplexes me. And by way of example, I have seen patients. So when I was active duty, I'm a former Navy neurologist. If your audience hasn't had a chance to read into that or look into that, and I spent most of my active duty time at Camp Lejeune. So I worked mostly with Marines, and then of course some sailors. And seeing Marines with traumatic brain injuries that would come in and I mean, sometimes I would have somebody with a fairly innocuous or mild injury. I mean, I recall a young 19-year-old Marine who had a tire, not even a full inflated tire, just like an empty rubber tire that was this buddy threw at him and it bumped him in the head. And this gentleman was so disabled that he was medically retired from the service because he could never get back to his job. And I another memorable story of mine, my very first page on call at Camp Lejeune was a satellite phone call from Afghanistan. And I had basically a primary care doctor, so this family medicine doctor, it was his first deployment, and they started taking sniper fire, and unfortunately, a Marine took a round to the helmet that fortunately didn't penetrate his head, but the bullet kind of rode around his Kevlar helmet, but it knocked him unconscious. And then he fell another 20 feet and he had a second injury. So this kind of double injury that was certainly on the order of at minimum a moderate traumatic brain injury, if not severe. And this is a kid that I thought, oh my gosh, I mean, we have to, medevac him and get him to a hospital. He's going to need brain surgery. I mean, it was a life-threatening, very, very scary situation. And this guy walked into my clinic 6 months later, like nothing had happened. So the reason I bring that up is to say that there's still a lot we have to learn about the mechanisms that underlie traumatic brain injuries. And I mean, force, angles, genetics, inflammation, recovery. I mean, there's so many facets to think about. So really, I'm thankful that there's been more research, but there's still a lot to learn. Than to your point, and obviously what you've been through.
Before we cover the next topic in this episode, I want to introduce you to the adventure sports lifestyle with what I call a micro story about an adventure that I've had. The adventure sports lifestyle and my deep connection to nature is essential to my good health, so here's the story. On a daily basis, it is sometimes difficult for me to process information quickly. So if someone is talking too fast, I sometimes have to ask them to slow down. But what I've learned is that as a whitewater kayaker, especially if you're in fast moving water, like at 10,000 feet in the mountains of Colorado, and there are boulders coming at you quickly, there are other boats, especially other rafts that you want to avoid. So I'm in a small kayak and there are lots of rafts on the river. And you want to make sure that you don't come up on a raft and go under it and wind up upside down under a raft, having to swim your way out of your boat and out from under the raft, because that's a very dangerous situation. However, a lot of things are happening very quickly when you're whitewater kayaking. The beautiful thing that came out of this experience is that when I'm kayaking, I am in the zone. All that I'm thinking about is reading and running the river, deciding where I'm going to take my path downriver. It requires processing a lot of information very quickly and making good decisions about paddle strokes to make to avoid obstacles, catching an eddy, and getting back out into the current. I did that. I hope this inspires you to challenge your brain processing capabilities through adventure sports like whitewater kayaking. It's definitely a sport you have to enter into slowly, But once you get there, you can level up your cognition, your memory, your ability to retain and process information and make decisions quickly by whitewater kayaking. I hope this inspires you to get outside and adventure alone with friends, family, or the people you love most. Now, back to the show where we're talking to Dr. Ryan Williamson. So, Dr. Williamson, you've done a lot of really interesting work after leaving the military as well. Can you tell us how you came to develop your personal philosophy on treating patients?
Absolutely. Excuse me. So the, the paradigm that I like to think about when it comes to our just an idea of total wellness is for us to all understand the disconnect between our modern world and how we evolved as people. And what I mean by that is that when we think about what our ancestors used to do, and that this was not that long ago, by the way, we're not talking about, millions of years ago. This was, maybe on the order of, I don't know, just even a couple hundred years ago, that life was very, very different for all of us. But let's go back to the hunter-gatherer cave dwellers, because that's kind of the example that I like to give. But our ancestors woke up with the sun, and they lived together in tribes. And when they woke up, they probably felt hungry because maybe they had something to eat the day before, maybe they didn't. But one thing was for sure, they'd go walk, they'd have to go move to find food if they didn't have anything in camp. So this is, provide a sense of daily movement to go find something, maybe small game, excuse me, handful of blueberries or whatever it was. And then they would, maybe come back to camp and then bed down for the night. Nothing really stressed them out too much, and they weren't worried about, I don't know, what their stock portfolio was doing or what their boss or their emails were telling them, right? They just sort of got back together, told stories, and then went to sleep. And when it got dark, and then they woke up the next day and did it all over again. And to state the obvious, Antoinette, life is not like that at all. I mean, we live in comfortable, climate-controlled environments. We wake up to alarm clocks. We live in artificially lit environments. Food is abundant. I mean, you just have to go to the pantry and you can grab whatever you want, or Costco or wherever. And as we are both sitting here and enjoying a podcast together, we sit all day. We're sedentary. We don't move like we're supposed to. And the reason I paint that picture and that difference is that this is not congruent with our biology. And when we think about how our brains work, how our bodies work, how we're designed to heal, how we're designed to recover, just how we're designed to function, modern life has rapidly, or our social evolution has rapidly outpaced our biology. And again, modern life does not set us up well to be healthy. So, that's the paradigm that I like to at least educate people on, and I want your listeners to think about. And when we look at the medical evidence, what we know actually helps with brain health and body health long term, it respects those pillars that do respect our biology and is closer to what, again, our ancestors were doing. Namely, eating a nice whole food, balanced diet, keeping in mind our caloric needs, not over consuming, moving regularly, lowering our stress, connecting with people, having groups or the sort of tribe-like mentality, getting quality sleep, getting exposure to light early in the day. I mean, all of these things we know have a massive, massive impact on our biology and our ability to actually heal ourselves and to be well. And especially after something like a traumatic brain injury, this becomes even more important. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. And I'm happy to go any number of directions there.
You talked about a lot of concepts, and it's going to be really difficult for people to remember. Like you, everything that you talked about is what I practice, and it's why I can have this conversation with you. Normally, on a day like today, after one business meeting or one podcast interview, in this case, my brain is done for the day. I would have to use my alpha brainwave stimulator, maybe go take a nap, take a walk, maybe lie down a little longer. But I definitely could not do anything for the rest of the day that uses my brain, extensively, like for writing or having a deep conversation about anything. I would be lucky to make sentences, but I practice everything that you said. I practice that. And people, I can tell you, you won't find better advice And you made it simple for us to follow with your first book, The Incredible Brain. Can you tell us what you can find in this book?
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to talk about the book. So very humbled that we launched the book last month, hit bestseller, and I think that's a reflection of it actually helping people, and that has been the feedback. People that have picked it up have really gotten something out of it and enjoyed it. But I've tried my best to distill what I know from the medical literature and what I have been telling my patients for years about how to take care of themselves into one resource that anybody can have, whether I see you as a patient or not, or a client, or whether we never meet. I hope we do, but even if we don't, just a resource to hand somebody to say, here, try this because we know this helps. And the way that it's organized, before I get into the first bit of science on brain structure, function, or what could happen with traumatic brain injuries, or God forbid, Alzheimer's or strokes or heart attacks or any of that, the first chapter is called "Find Your Why." And Antoinette, I think it is so important, and especially as a veteran community here, where we're all used to knowing what the mission is, or to having a target or a goal or a purpose. If we don't have that, and by the way, most of us or many of us lose that when we take off the uniform, as I'm sure we have all experienced and your community's experienced. And if we don't find a new direction and a new purpose, it can become very difficult to really thrive or succeed in life. And so I want everyone to spend time on that first, which is why it's again that's chapter one. Because without that, we just we're reacting to everything, and we end up kind of like a ship off course, just blowing around in the sea or in the wind. And I mean, life's hard, right? We have injuries, and we have unexpected events that happen, and we lose people we love, and they're terrible circumstances we have to deal with. And if we don't have that end goal in mind, it's very tough to get there.
That's why I promote the adventure sports lifestyle, because on the times when I'm having flare ups and I could hardly walk and hardly make sentences, and I can't even pull my 75-pound, I can't draw my 75-pound bow
Mm.
to do some archery, which helps to retrain my brain for things that require focus and attention. That's how I recovered my ability to speak and to remember the rules of the road and the foreign languages that I've learned, is through archery. And when I can't do those things because I'm having a flare-ups of health challenges, my brain is not in a depressed mode because I'm thinking about what little bit of exercise can I do today that propels me forward to be able to get back to doing the things that I love, being outdoors, being active. And so I highly encourage you to think about your passion and purpose in life, because that will keep you from falling into those dark holes that are very difficult to climb out of later.
That's exactly right. And again, for anyone listening, I mean, Antoinette, your ability to find purpose, meaning, and also to engage in not just physical activity like archery or movement, but also in learning a new language, or learning multiple new languages in your case. These are all activities that stimulate neuroplasticity, which is the amazing property that we can take advantage of to help retrain our brain in the setting of an injury, or in the setting of maybe a mood disorder. If somebody's feeling depressed, we can undergo certain types of therapies or activities to help rewire our brain. And even with specific activities, which I guess we'll talk about in a minute, like meditation or mindfulness, you can actually increase the connectivity and strengthen the connections in your what's called your prefrontal cortex, so the front part of the brain here that allows us to have our highest and best function. And not only are you helping yourself feel better in the moment, or learn a language or whatever the given activity is, but you're increasing the propensity to be able to function at a higher level in the future, because you're training your brain to anticipate more of that same activity, not just today, but tomorrow, the next month, the next year. So by exercising your brain in that way, especially if you've had a traumatic brain injury of any kind, this makes a massive difference in the long term, even though it can feel very difficult to get started at first. But once you overcome that inertia and start to build more of those connections, I mean, it makes a massive difference on where we end up. Hence, having that goal or that purpose in mind to march towards, regardless of the journey and how we get there.
How effective is therapies like EFT tapping on uh, being able to get into your meditative state?
So EFT is one that I'm not familiar with the literature, the data on specifically, but I know a lot of people that have done it, and I have heard anecdotally from many people, patients, friends, clients that they like it and it works. So yeah, I mean, again, I can't speak to it specifically, but people do really seem to enjoy it.
I've gotten a lot of benefit out of it, and we recently did a podcast episode on it. So if you want to learn more about EFT tapping, make sure you take a look at that episode or listen to that episode if you're not on YouTube. So, Dr. Williamson, tell us more about what we can find in your book.
So I said chapter one's find your why. So it's all about purpose. And then really the book is broken up into two parts. So what I call the mechanisms and then the interventions. And the mechanisms are the first half of the book deals with how is your brain structured? How does it work? What can go wrong essentially? I mean, so what are the pitfalls that are so common? And I didn't realize this while I was active duty. Wasn't until I left the military in 2022 where I went back to civilian medicine where I was seeing really older patients. But by definition, our service members pre-injury of any kind are healthy people, right? We have to be because we're screened to be healthy to do that job. And I didn't realize how much I actually enjoyed helping people elevate their performance or helping healthy people elevate their performance or stay on the battlefield in the case of Marines and sailors. But when we fast forward to the later half of life, and if people have been dealing with chronic disease for 10, 20, 30 years or more, this is when we see problems like heart attacks, strokes, dementia, all these terrible things that show up, or traumatic brain injuries. Doesn't take that long necessarily, but and these are very debilitating, as you know. And so it just seeing largely preventable conditions made me very sad after doing this for a period of a few years. And I said there's got to be a better way to help more people, and surely, of course, there is. And what we know about the medical literature and all these interventions that we've discussed, and many of the lifestyle factors that you've put in place, i.e., the movement, the light, the sleep, nutrition. So anyway, I walk people through all of this in the first half of the book to talk about what could go wrong. How do these things happen in our body? And then the last half of the book on the intervention piece is just how do we avoid it? And how can we all ensure that we live a long, healthy, and impactful life? And just walking people through step by step, sort of what to do. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
I love that you do that, Dr. Williamson, because what I find is that people get great information from podcasts like this and others, and then they're get a little stuck with how do I put this into practice in my life? So I love a step-by-step plan. I'm all about it. I'm really glad to hear that.
And to take that a step further, Antoinette, I started writing the book over a year ago. So this was September of 2024 that I really sat down to put this together. And as I said, we launched it last month. And again, been very overjoyed with the positive feedback. However, I've realized that I probably could have made it even more simple in terms of what to do. And it took me a while to kind of come up with this idea, or at least distill it down to something that I think is even easier for people. So I'm not discouraging, of course, if people want to get the book, that's great. I think it will be helpful. But since then, I've even created a free resource for people on Facebook. And we can provide links for this, of course, but we have a Facebook group that's 100% free to join. And I've created what I call the Brain Protocol. And BRAIN is an acronym that I have modeled after a military SOP. Surprise, because we all know how many acronyms we have in the military, how much we love those. But when we go through BRAIN, so it's all these pillars that I talk about that are evidence-based that we know actually helps with long-term brain and body health. And we don't need to run through all of them, but just at a high level, B stands for breath work. So it's all these, all the things meditation, mindfulness related, breathing exercises. R is for rest, so all things sleep related, letting your body heal and recover. A is for activity, so all things movement related, exercise related. I is for intake, so all things nutrition, supplementation, staying away from, again, being mindful of caloric balance, staying away from ultra processed foods, things like that. And then N is for nurturing. And so this is all about that community, that tribe, that support. And I've just got a free, I think it's 8 videos that are like 5 to 7 minutes each. They're quick, they're easy. I just walk people through each letter, what to do, and then they get a free companion guide along with that to be able to write down their favorite letter. Where do we start? And again, this is especially if somebody's faced an injury of any kind or a brain injury, as you know, it can be really hard to start somewhere and like I said, overcome that inertia to get going. And so my approach, which again is evidence-based, don't we don't want people to try the whole thing or to start with or even the hard letter. You actually start with what's easy or what you're already good at. You optimize that thing because that creates a little momentum and a little win. Say you already sleep really well and or maybe you sleep okay, but you could do a little better. So you put in, some sleep hygiene and the right sleep protocol, and within a week or two, you wake up, you're feeling better, you're sharper, you're more ready to take on your day. And then maybe the next one is, well, I've done a little activity, but I could move more. And so you focus on letter A and you maybe walk 20 minutes or start going to the gym or whatever the thing is very quickly. But in my experience, within a period of 60 to 90 days, this is transformative for people. And maybe longer if you've got a serious brain injury. But still, people make meaningful progress in a short order, and they can actually stack these habits, and then it becomes just part of your daily routine. And your performance is elevated, your focus is improved, you feel better, your mood tends to be better, people lose weight. Not to mention, it's going to help you live longer. It's a positive feed forward cycle, and it's just amazing to watch people go through this transformation.
Thank you so much for making this available for people. I will definitely link to the Facebook group and also promote your protocol on my X space and other social media. Wow, that's really a really incredible resource that I wish I had when I was recovering, but I'm going to use it for maintenance to keep my brain as healthy as it feels today.
Yes, yes. And a quick, maybe I don't like the term hack because I don't believe in like biohacks or short term, quick fixes. I believe in long term solutions and maintenance, as you said, Antoinette. I think it's a great way to put it. But if there is one intervention that I think could be super high yield for your audience and especially for somebody that's had a traumatic brain injury, that would be to consider creatine monohydrate as a supplement. Do you have any experience with that, Antoinette?
I do. I'm a former competitive bodybuilder and powerlifter in the Army. So yes,
Have you seen any of the literature or even used it since you've had your brain injury, just out of curiosity?
I have not. So I'm definitely taking note on this.
Yes. So again, creatine, in my opinion, and creatine monohydrate specifically, because they're multiple forms. So monohydrate in particular, I think, has the highest quality data. I, like you, Antoinette, if it took it years ago for sports. I was never a bodybuilder or that competitive, but I was a rower in high school and played a little rugby in college. But I, for muscle building, for strength gains, absolutely, data are very clear for years, decades even. That's the majority of the literature that we've been familiar with. In the last 10 to 15 years, there's been new emerging data on not just muscle health, but on maybe liver health, kidney health, bone health, heart health, but in particular brain health. And when we take a dose high enough, so typically I think the recommended sort of weightlifting dose has been on the order of maybe 5 grams of creatine monohydrate per day, just kind of a scoop of this stuff, that you dole out and drink in your water and go work out. Somewhere between 5 and 10 grams, and I think 10 grams. This is really weight based, so it depends on your body mass index, or your male, female, how much muscle do you have, that kind of thing. But as we get closer to that 10-gram threshold, there's a transporter called the CRT, or the creatine transporter, that actually helps shuttle creatine across your blood-brain barrier, which is a semi-permeable protective covering around the brain that lets certain things through and keeps other things out. And we can actually shuttle creatine into the brain. And just like it works in the muscles to help with increasing energy production, so helping manufacture more ATP, which for anybody that has a background in physiology like Antoinette here, that actually is the energy currency in the body. But it turns out our neurons use this too, which is really interesting. And so we can actually provide more energy substrate for the brain. And in particular, in the setting of a traumatic brain injury, and lowering neuroinflammation and helping turn on some of these signaling molecules that help the brain heal. This is a game changer for people. And even people that don't have a traumatic brain injury notice cognitive benefits. There's even some data, early data in Alzheimer's, that patients that have early dementia actually function better with creatine on board. And there have even been doses above and beyond 20 grams a day for in the setting of an acute traumatic brain injury. So if somebody's brain's really inflamed, or they've got a really massive injury, that we can infuse creatine, or feed it to people, and they actually tend to recover faster. So anyway, like I said, don't like the word hack, but if there is such a thing, I think considering creatine monohydrate as part of a supplement stack can be highly beneficial for people.
Is there a certain time of day that it's more effective? Should people use it in the morning, evening?
That's a great question. So most of the literature I'm familiar with would suggest a dose once a day, and in the morning. I personally break it up twice a day. Once those receptors are saturated, in theory, you can excrete some in the kidneys or in the urine if it's not being absorbed, or if it's not going to the muscles or enough getting across the blood-brain barrier. I'm not, again, I would have to review the literature to know if that's scientifically sound or not. It's just my kind of my hunch. I don't know. And perhaps there is data to support that, but I personally take 5 grams in the morning, 5 grams at night. And I do notice a cognitive benefit throughout the day. Not to mention, like, I went for a little 5 mile run this morning up here in the mountains. And so that seems to help with my workout performance. And then, as some of your audience members might know, when we sleep, this is part of why quality sleep is so important. That's actually the only time that our brains and our bodies heal and recover, either from injury or from exercise. We get to break down and rebuild the muscles. So if we've got some on board in the evening time, again, in theory, that would help with that process. Again, is that scientific, or is that just me? I don't know. Being idealistic, I'm not sure.
Well, in my research on methylene blue, which I use, and I credit to my ability to uh, have multiple meetings in a single day, I could not have done this before. And if you listen to some of my earlier episodes of the podcast, and from time to time, you can hear little brain glitches where I'm in the middle of a sentence and my brain just kind of reboots itself, or I don't know what to call it. That's what it feels like. And I have a lot fewer of those
Yeah.
incidents. So I think your theory on creatine is sound for what it's worth.
You give me some homework here, because I should know the answer to that. But I'll have to check it out. So maybe I can circle back when I get some more information on on the studies.
You're invited back here anytime, Dr. Williamson.
I appreciate it.
When you're planning an adventure camping, rafting, RVing, or mountaineering, you'll need quality food with sufficient vitamins, minerals, and nutrients to fuel your adventure. My partner, Ready Hour, is here to help you ahead of time. Ready Hour has a long history of providing calorie-rich, reliable, and delicious nourishment for life's unexpected situations and adventures. They're part of a family of companies that have served millions of people like you for decades. My family and I use Ready Hour products for camping, mountaineering, and disaster preparedness for 5 years now. They're not just reliable, they're also your affordable option too. Long-term storable food shouldn't break the bank. That's why they have great sales and payment options for you. It's your bridge to safety and survival when you're on an adventure. So make your next decision your smartest decision. Be ready for adventure tomorrow, today. Trust Ready Hour. Ready to shop? Use my affiliate link in the show description.
That.
So how about a few questions from our listeners?
Of course.
All right, I'm so excited, and I'm just going to read them as they wrote them. I love this first question because I can tell this person listens to me a lot, because they're using a phrase that I coined: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or photograph. So the question is, the male human brain continues developing well into adulthood, generally until around age 25 to 27. What does being in a combat zone do to a still developing brain, specifically when it comes to constantly activating the general adaptation syndrome, fight, flight, freeze, photograph, or fawn?
That's an excellent question. I don't know that there are any studies that have looked directly at that. And this is certainly a relevant topic, being that obviously active duty recruits can be, 18 to, well, really in any adult age, but from 18 on, And most of our active duty population, of course, is 18 to mid 20s. So at that time when our brains are still forming, at least the frontal lobes, which is correct, we develop into our mid to late 20s, and perhaps some males never fully develop. It's a joke, but we all know people that it's questionable, right? Um,
Absolutely.
Again, I don't know that I can speak in an informed manner on this without having clear evidence, because that is always the paradigm that I do my best to approach topics like this from. However, we know from let's say early childhood studies that early adverse child events can have a massively negative impact on healthy brain development, and that has potential limiting effects, to put it euphemistically, later in life. So meaning, we can see all kinds of mood disorders or neuropsychiatric disorders develop as a result of early adverse childhood events. And in my opinion, I mean, there's no more stressful job on the planet than being deployed to an active duty combat zone when you're in fear for your life. Not to mention the predictable PTSD, depression, anxiety, all of these things that can result as from being exposed to active duty or sorry, I keep saying active duty to combat. Excuse me. Um, so surely this is something that should be investigated, and I would think would have a negative lasting impact. Now, is that permanent or not? Again, remains to be seen. I am of the cautiously optimistic mindset that, again, the right types of therapy, the right types of activity that engage that neuroplasticity mechanism that we talked about to help restructure, rewire the brain to overcome, PTSD or anxiety or chronically negative thoughts, or even in the setting of a lost motor function, and in the setting of a brain injury, where people can actually recover how to walk, talk, or maybe even in some cases see. The brain's pretty amazing and it's pretty resilient. So I'm giving a long, winding answer here, and the short story is that I don't know that we have the data to support that. Some sort of thinking out loud, but again, my hunch would be likely has a negative impact, but also likely very recoverable with the right interventions.
Our next question from a listener is one that hits home because the love of my life is a double IED survivor, explosion survivor, with a traumatic brain injury. So the question is, are you able to explain why it appears that time slows down after being involved in an explosion such as an IED?
So during the event, or like reliving it
I
in the setting of PTSD?
No, I think what they're asking is, after the explosion happens, keeping track of time
Hmm.
and feeling like time slows down for them. And
Hmm.
so maybe the rest of the world is at this speed and they're
Hmm.
at this speed, and it's kind of hard to keep up. I think it's that feeling of time being slower.
I see. The reason I ask specifically is that when people are in the middle of an acutely stressful event, there's a phenomenon where time does appear to slow down for people as they're reacting to something, and time's interesting. It's a relative measurement, right? Even Einstein proved this is sort of a relative concept, and it's relative to how fast we're going and where we are and what we're dealing with. And in the middle of a stressful event, again, people tend to react and process more quickly. I mean, your brain's burning through more resources at a faster rate to do this. So in the middle of, again, combat, or some sort of something that triggers that fight or flight mechanism, we can feel like time is slowing down, when in fact people around us, or in another situation, who are in fact in a situation for the same number of seconds, minutes, or however long you want to mark that time, experience it as happening much more quickly. Um, but after an injury or after a blast, exposure or something like this, we now know that exposure to concussive forces that don't cause direct contact. So meaning if you think of a piece of shrapnel or, a fist, or a bullet, or some horrible thing that could directly injure our brain. We now know that it being adjacent to a blast wave or a shock wave can actually penetrate the skull and the brain and cause an injury this way. I.e., if somebody's exposed to an IED, or they're in an EOD team or something like that, and a bomb goes off nearby, this can injure the brain. As a result of that, I'm hypothesizing here, but as a result of that, if somebody had a brain injury and they are not processing information as quickly or efficiently as they did pre-injury, that might make it feel like, wow, like this person's talking at 1,000,000 miles an hour, and I'm not able to fully absorb the conversation or the information like I was, and that might make it feel like they are slowed down relative to somebody else who's keeping up at a higher rate, a higher pace. So that's how I'm interpreting that question, Antoinette. So I hope that's correct for your listener. But again, very common phenomenon after an injury like this, whether it again is a blast exposure, direct trauma, et cetera. And again, in many cases, recoverable with the right interventions in place.
That's good to know. And I do experience that too. Sometimes it feels like the pace of life is much faster than I'm capable of processing. And surprisingly, a lot of people are not understanding or compassionate when I say something very simple. I'm sorry, I've had a traumatic brain injury. Would you mind talking just a little bit slower because I'm not able to follow the conversation? I've even had doctors become angry with me, and one even told me I talk how I talk. And a lot of people don't understand that I look like I can keep up with you, but I cannot if you're talking too fast. And they don't have empathy for the fact that a senior citizen or a person with a hidden disability might be struggling.
I'm so glad you said that, Antoinette. And I just want to validate every one of your listeners, in your audience who is dealing with a silent wound where you don't appear to look abnormal to people. I actually just put a post on LinkedIn yesterday about this because you mentioned us connecting on LinkedIn. But even I didn't realize what I was dealing with and carrying as a result of my time as an active duty service member. And I'm a brain doctor, for crying out loud. I mean, so we all deal with things that to the untrained eye or to someone who doesn't know you, they think you just look like a normal person, when in fact internally you could be at war with yourself, or barely string a sentence together. It takes all the effort in the world to just get a thought out. So I just want everyone to know to normalize that, and to know that it's okay, that there is hope, and to just try to brush that off as best you can. And I'm sorry that you and other people have dealt with that, especially for medical providers, because we really do know better.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I really appreciate it. I have one final question. Dr. Sonia, Dr. Sonia Lubomirsky, she has this theory, which I subscribe to. I created my whole new normal big life process before learning the theory. After learning the theory, I saw, wow, I already did that in my life. So it's great. But her hypothesis is 50% of what makes you who you are comes from your genes that are turned off or on. And then 10% is environment, things that happen to you, like a brain injury, for example. But 40% of what makes you who you are is within your control because it's lifestyle changes. So if you could leave us with your top 3, 4, or 5, however many you think is important lifestyle changes that we all can do, whether you have a healthy brain, an injured brain, or an aging brain, to have good cognitive ability throughout our lifetime so that we have not just a longer life, but a more active, happier, healthier life.
Absolutely. Well, I would challenge the assertion that only 40% of our health outcomes are lifestyle based. And this may be splitting hairs here, because we know that any lifestyle intervention interacts with and changes genetic expression in the body. So, there's some overlap here. But the data that I'm familiar with, and this is something I do try to keep up with, so that number is more like 70 to 90% of our health outcomes. And I've even read some recent studies that may be a little ambitious. And again, depends on how you interpret all these things, that it's like 95%, meaning that let's just say that the majority or the vast majority of your health outcomes are within your control, period. So
Incredible.
it really is. And I think that, again, the narrative around, oh, I'll never do that because it's just my genes, or I'll never overcome this injury or this thing, or my parents had this, therefore I will. We know that's not true in 99% of cases. I mean, yes, there are some rare heritable genetic conditions for sure. And again, this is a complex landscape, but 70 to 90%, perhaps more, of all health outcomes are lifestyle based. So with that in mind, that is why I have spent so much time trying to simplify this, as I said. And when we look at the brain protocol again that I went over a minute ago, so the breath work, rest, activity, intake, nurturing, those are the pillars. And those are the pillars that are evidence based, that are lifestyle based, that actually do meaningfully move the needle on our health. So again, we can run through those again if you'd like. And if I it's really hard for me to pick even two or three of those because they're all so impactful. Maybe if I had to pick one, if there's one intervention that turns on the most genes, mechanisms, et cetera, probably regular movement or exercise, or different types of exercise, or perhaps the most impactful. But that can't be at the expense of not sleeping. That can't be at the expense of not taking in the proper nutrition, or having healthy relationships, or lowering our stress, or whatever else. So it all matters. I mean, it really does. But maybe exercise first, and then the rest kind of on down from there.
Well, Dr. Williamson, it has been an absolute pleasure and an honor to get to know you more. And thank you so much for God's work that you're doing. I truly mean that from the bottom of my heart. Where can folks get your book, find you, and connect with you through social media?
Absolutely. Well, Antoinette, first off, thank you for having me, and thank you for using your story, your voice, and your platform to help empower others to live a healthy, impactful life, because it is just so important, I think, for people to know what's possible, and you're providing that. So thank you for what you're doing. Um, for the book, it's on Amazon. That's probably the easiest place to go. So if you just open up Amazon and type in The Incredible Brain, that should get you there. We've got all forms from ebook to audiobook if you want to listen to me talk for 10 hours, which, as my wife says, there's no way she'd do that. But but if you like the paperback or the hard copy, that's there too. I mentioned the Facebook link, which again we can provide, and we're on all things social media. But if people go to our main website, that's Transcend Health Group, so transcendhealthgroup.com. That'll link to everything, to the book, to our Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, all that good stuff.
Perfect. There will be links in the show description. You can also download the transcripts. Thank you so much for joining me today, from your cabin in the woods to my cabin in the woods.
Yes, Antoinette, thank you.
Until next time, friends, I'm Antoinette Lee, your wellness warrior here at the New Normal Big Life podcast. I hope one day to see you on the river, in the backcountry, or in the horse barn living your best life. Struggling with health problems or seeking natural health solutions, we've got you covered. Don't miss our latest podcast episodes, exclusive blog posts, and free ebooks packed with life-changing wellness tips. Be sure to help others find this great information by leaving us a star rating and a review wherever you get your podcasts. Magnesium, an unsung hero, fuels over 300 bodily reactions, from heart health to stress relief. Magnesium expert Natalie Girardo, founder of Rooted In, found freedom from anxiety, insomnia, and pain through topical magnesium. It transformed my life, she says, inspiring her mission to share this mineral's power. Cardiologist Dr. Jack Wolfson calls magnesium essential for heart health, helping regulate rhythms, blood sugar, and reduce inflammation. Up to 80% of people may be deficient, facing issues like depression, migraines, insomnia, or muscle cramps. For women over 40, magnesium eases menopause symptoms, boosts energy, and supports bones. Choosing the correct type of magnesium matters. Real stories, Natalie's and mine, highlight its impact.
After interviewing magnesium expert Natalie Girado, I became a customer. I was already a magnesium fan, having been told by 2 cardiologists to take magnesium for a minor heart arrhythmia. Natalie explains it best in the Magnesium, the Mineral Transforming Lives episode of New Normal Big Life, number 4 in Alternative Health on Apple Podcast. Listen wherever you get your podcasts. Fast forward after the interview, I bought the Rooted In bundle for sleep, tranquility, and pain relief. As a spine injury survivor with several other health challenges, I'm in constant pain. However, I don't take any pain medication. Rooted In is now one more source that nature provided to give our bodies what it needs when it needs it. You can find magnesium in natural bodies of water like lakes and rivers and in soil. But modern farming practices have stripped magnesium out of the soil and our food. That's why today, Rooted In's rest, relief, and tranquility are part of our afternoon and nightly sleep routine. My guy who did 2 tours kicking indoors in Iraq with the Marines now has no trouble falling asleep. I no longer have to take melatonin before bedtime to fall asleep. So after I became a customer and saw how well these products worked, I applied to become an affiliate. I've been sharing the secrets of Rooted In with friends and family from age 38 to 68, and everyone has gotten amazing results within minutes of applying the cream. Do something naturally good for yourself. Get Rooted In. Click my affiliate link in the episode description to shop now.